You know, if you live in Northern California, you know that the Napa Valley, Sonoma Valley is home to some of the greatest wine in the world. And tonight, we're going to be speaking with someone who makes some of that fine wine, Joe Wolosz of Gentleman Farmer Vineyards. Welcome.
Thank you.
Now, you're a California boy, born and bred, correct?
Yeah, born and raised in San Luis Obispo.
So as soon as you came out of the cradle, you said, I got to make wine. Was that it?
There's always been an interest there. There's always been an interest. When I was young in college, I went to school for hotel restaurant management. And there was a strong food and beverage focus. But during that time, I had an interest in wine and worked for a couple wineries down in the San Luis Obispo area, another wine country, and have had an interest ever since.
You know, it's interesting you talk about the difference between San Luis Obispo and Northern California. Earlier this year, my husband did the California AIDS ride.
Okay.
And we, spent a lot of time in San Luis Obispo and around there. And I didn't know a lot about the wines of that region. What's the difference between the grapes that you get in San Luis Obispo and what you get here in Northern California?
Well, I mean, with Sonoma, Napa, San Luis, Monterey, Salinas, all these areas have very different climates. So they're growing different grapes in general. But Napa Valley is Cab is king, Cabernet Sauvignon, and people are growing Cab. San Luis Obispo area, getting to Edna Valley, Roy Grande, it's getting a cooler climate. So there's more Pinot, more Chardonnay being grown down there. Paso Robles area, though, is very hot. They're growing, Rhone varietals. They're growing Cabernet, Zinfandel.
So you like Cabernet, so that's why you hiked it up to Napa, correct?
No, I actually was in San Francisco for 14 years, and in 2003 sold my business here, and my partner and I decided to move to Yountville.
Right.
And his family's from Napa. He was born and raised up there and just kind of fell into it. I mean, once you're living there, our next door neighbor is the winemaker for Eller's Estate down the street. Stelzner's live, good friends. A lot of winemakers just in the area, and we decided to do this wine project in 2005.
Right. Now, Gentleman Farmers puts out 500 cases a year?
Roughly 500 average a year. We kind of go up and down depending on harvest and what we can get.
So now, I know there's been some debate because I have friends who are in the wine industry, and what do you call a winery that makes 500 cases? Is that small? Is it a boutique winery?
It's tiny.
Tiny. That's the official language.
Yeah, boutique winery. Our license, our O2 permit, to be technical, allows us to make wine up to 25,000 cases. And so anything under 25,000 is considered boutique. And so when you go up Highway 29, which I'm sure you have done, in Mondavi, and you see all these big wineries, we would be the little lemonade stand on the side of the road next to those guys.
Right. Well, I mean, my husband and I have a home in Guerneville on the Russian River, and we kind of like those wineries that are the size of lemonade stands. There's more of a family atmosphere. I mean, clearly this is with you and your partner. You put this together specifically not because you want to be a $25,000 case winery?
I don't think we gave it too much thought when we got involved in the project. But it's my partner and I, and then we have a third business partner.
Right.
And in 2005, we kind of got together with this guy. His name's Scott Tracy, and he was the wine director, sommelier for a restaurant called La Toque in Napa, a very nice restaurant. And they really pride themselves on their wine pairings. And so he pairs wine with food every day. And we wanted to make wine. He wanted to make wine. He wanted to do this project where he can create wine that could be paired with food. So that's kind of our slant on what we're doing. It's very much focused on acidity, structure, elegance rather than power. So.
And you have a blog in which you talk about these issues, correct?
I have a blog that I talk about this and some other things. It's called The Fluency Perspective. And it's my journey going through this WSET program, which is the Wine and Spirit Education Trust. And this is the precursor to Master of Wine. I'm in the diploma level right now, level 4. It's going to take probably 24 to 30 months to do this, and I'm officially starting the project January 2013. So it's starting right now. And I've decided, well, let me go back. Having this winery in Napa Valley, we're making Napa Valley Cab, I realized that I wanted to have more of a global perspective and a palate that's not specifically Napa. And so if you want to understand Napa Valley Cab, you have to understand your benchmark. And the benchmark obviously would be Bordeaux. Climate's very different in Bordeaux, so there's obviously going to be some variation on the two wines. But to appreciate the variations here, you have to understand what your benchmark is. Just like if you're going to appreciate a song that's a variation on the theme, you have to understand what the theme is, the main song, the real song. So going through this program with the WSET, Wine and Spirit Education Trust, it's based out of London, I decided that if I'm going to talk about it and document my experience, blog about it, I should have some sort of slant about it that makes it a little more interesting for myself. And so I've decided to tackle the 4 languages in European wine regions at the same time. and hopefully get them to fluency. And so every 6 months I'll take on a new language. I'm starting with French. I have a little bit of French in my background, or French language learning in my background, so I thought it'd be easier to start there. I love German wines, so German will be the next 6 months, and I'll go through Spanish and Italian, save that one for last. But it's interesting because going through this WSET program, you want to be able to articulate what is in this glass to somebody
In the
else.
language of...
Well, I'm going to bring it back to that language,
Yeah.
but just in general, in English, being able to articulate what is in this glass and articulate it concisely, precisely, efficiently. So that's something about being fluent about speaking about wine. So there's also the fluency associated with language. Bringing these two together, I think I'll have a much greater understanding of the wines of France or Germany or Italy and Spain by studying them in their own language.
Right. Well, as a journalist, I have to study hard as well. So, I have to taste this.
Okay.
So, tell us about what we're about to taste. It's a 2009 Cabernet Sauvignon from Gentleman Farmer.
Yeah.
What am I about to taste?
Napa Valley fruit. You're about to taste a 2009 Cabernet that we make just south of Yountville. All Napa Valley fruit. So there's 3 different source vineyards. It's actually just a dash of Cabernet Franc in here, but with the Cabernet Sauvignon, you have 3 source vineyards, so it is a blend of Cabernet. We get some fruit from Oak Knoll, which is just south of Yountville, Valley Floor. We get some Cabernet from St. Helena, Valley Floor as well. And then we got some Rutherford bench fruit, and we were able to barrel ferment that Rutherford bench fruit, so it has these layers of spice, sweet spice.
I was about to say, it's got, I'm not a wine expert, although I've certainly tasted my fair share, but it seems to me there's a little bit of a spice and cherry note to it.
There's a lot of red cherry, sour cherry, black fruit that comes through on this for me. A lot of spice, though, from that barrel fermentation. But like I said before about the aim of the project, the aim of creating this winery was to create wine that could be paired with food. So focusing on that structure, we really pull back on the oak. There's only about 20% new French on this wine. That's a conscious decision.
What have you learned the most? Well, let me back up.
Okay.
What has surprised you since you started the Gentleman Farmer Vineyard the most? What's been the biggest surprise?
Biggest surprise is that I jumped into this without a business plan. I did this without thinking too hard about it. I think if we'd have thought about it, we wouldn't have done it. But they say it takes about 8 years to really kind of get the winery going. Because you always, with red wines, you have 3 years of inventory always like held up. So right now, we haven't even bottled the 2010. We've already harvested 2012. And so we have these 3 years of inventory always at play. And so there's a lot of expenses associated with the wine. But we're in our 8th harvest, so we're kind of hitting that point where everyone says it's starting to go on its own.
Yeah.
And having a great time doing it.
Now, organizations like Out in the Vineyard and whatnot, and LGBT tourist organizations that are marketing Napa Valley as a gay destination. It's kind of, we have a house in Guerneville, which during the 80s was a big gay destination. And then it kind of laid fallow for a while, and now it's coming back. And it seems to me a part of that is a new generation of winemakers, and there seems to be a healthy contingent of gay men and women that are getting into this.
You had Mark Vogler on your program before, and that's how I was introduced to you. But Mark does with Gary Saperstein Out in the Vineyard, and and they also do the Big Gay Wine Train, and that's the Napa side, and Out in the Vineyard, the Sonoma side. And we participated the first 2 Big Gay Wine Trains. Jeff, my partner, and I poured our wine with, I think, both times of the main course. And then we participated Out in the Vineyard in Sonoma last year or the year before with those guys.
In our last few moments, talk to me about what you think is the biggest misperception about how people approach wine.
Biggest misperception?
Yeah, because I think a lot of people think, oh, well, I don't know anything about wine. I don't know.
I think that's it. I think people have not a fear, but a fear of making mistakes or something. I don't know. But the more I get into it and the more I know about it, the more I know I don't know anything. And so you kind of just appreciate that what can unfold before you might be mysterious. You might not be able to fully articulate it, but you can appreciate it and enjoy it.
So tell me, what do you think are some of the mistakes, or do people make mistakes when they approach wine?
I think that the fear of being wrong. When you're out to dinner, trust the sommelier. That's what he's there for. He's there to help you, not to embarrass you.
Not to embarrass you, to help you. Yes. Well, here's to you, and good luck to Gentleman Farmer Vineyards.
Thank you.
Next up, from wine to the arts, we'll be meeting one of the artists who helped make famous the images of Sylvester and Divine and a whole generation of stars. Cheers.
Cheers.